So, and I need to switch on the camera, I think. I believe that we are now live. We can be viewed now through YouTube as well, for those people who do not have the access to the Zoom meeting. Okay, and I really do hope that people can see us, and I would like now to see the screen. Once again, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for attending this presentation, this PowerPoint presentation. I hope that you can see the PowerPoint presentation, building scenarios and screenwriting tips. Can you see? Yes. Fine. Now there is just a question. The first question is, why do I speak in English, not in Arabic, or vice versa, which is very important. I think I owe you an answer to this question. Why shouldn't we make it all in Arabic? In other words, just in English at the moment, and I'm speaking English. Basically, the first answer is that I thought from the very beginning that some people from other countries, non-native speakers of Arabic, in other words, would come to join us. Unfortunately, none of them is here. I never expected anyone to come anyway. However, there's something more important that I would like to share with you, and please just pay attention to it. All of you are translators, and I am a translator, and we understand that. Or maybe we can feel that. Now look, what happens to me personally is a bit strange. It could be a bit strange. However, it is something that science supports. Now, theoretically, when I have an idea in my mind, I do the scenario writing in a way in Arabic, and I think about it in Arabic, so it happens in a specific way. Now I go immediately to make it into English because I usually make scenarios both in English and Arabic in parallel. And what happens is that I start changing everything in English. It is not because I am using free translation of my own ideas. It is something more serious than this. In fact, I am viewing reality in a totally different way in English than the way that I use in Arabic. To make it just clearer, look at anything in the physical world, like a table, for example, and let me challenge you. If you think about the table in Arabic, you will have information that's totally different from the information that you have in English about the same thing, which is the table, which is in the physical world. Now, an example for this is that what I was doing a scenario for my daughters, and there was, in Arabic, I was thinking about the examination, and one of the sisters is going to ask her sister about how she is preparing herself for the exam. Now, in Arabic, what I thought immediately was that there is a sister, she cares about her sister, and she says in Arabic, كيف الاستعداد للامتحان؟ إن شاء الله أمورك منيحة. This is the way that I thought. But in English, I suddenly started changing it all together. And in English, I said, studying hard for the exam. And that's all. Studying hard for the exam, just 4 words. This is the way that we think about it in English. For that reason, I say that scenario building in Arabic is not the same as English. However, they follow the same procedures. Hopefully, they follow the same procedures. Anyway, this is just an explanation why I am speaking now in English, because I want to think in English, not in Arabic. And why? Because I just want to think in English, that's all. Now, before I make an introduction to scenario writing, and then I will talk about the types of scripts, the plots, and the characters, etc. First of all, I would like to say, why do we learn scenario writing? Why do we have to learn scenario writing? In fact, I don't have any specific answer for this question. However, now I have a feeling, maybe you can agree or not, that the technological revolution is taking a peak in this decade. And at the moment, we're seeing now lots of software for animation flooding the internet at the moment. What that means is that what happens is that people are more encouraged to make commercials using those animation software. This means, in turn, that more skills are going to be required in order to do this job. For that reason, I feel that it's going to be very important to make a scenario. On the other hand, when we're talking about scenario building, this is something like an underestimated skill, not usually taught at the university level at the departments of English or translation. We don't know whether this should be included in the program, in the mainstream program of students of English and translation, as maybe part of the writing skills that they have. I don't know. But anyway, this is one way for any person who masters English and Arabic to start writing, to start expressing himself in writing, and to use the writing skills that he has. So in this presentation, I'm going now to talk about the scenario writing, just a simple introduction, and then move to the specific points that I want to talk to you about. Hopefully, we will try to make some kind of practical exercise about it. So, introduction to scenario building. As a matter of fact, when I talk about writing or about anything in the world, I try to see the global picture, the whole picture where something exists. And when we talk about scenario writing as a job for a linguist, I just talk about other jobs, similar jobs, which is first of all the ghost writing. And this is creative writing for a purpose, which is the ghost writing. A ghost writing is a person who sits with a novelist. He tries to understand all the ways that this novelist is using in his writing, and then he gets the idea from the novelist. He writes a novel on behalf of the novelist. And to the best of my knowledge, the price is going to be about $250,000 per year, I think. This is, I think, the price. So it's a very good price for the ghostwriting. There's also copywriting, which is not much expensive as this one, not much rewarding or feasible. However, copywriting is much better, it's much requires more skills than the skills needed for the translation activity. For that reason, copywriting is going to be considered also a rare talent, and a rare talent in the sense that very few people master it. But I think if some people can master it, at least they can get the job, and I think they will have a very good job here, which is copywriting. In other words, you go to the client and get all the information from him or her, and then you produce the text. In some way, it's going to be better and much more convenient for the client than to have a week work translated from Arabic into English and vice versa. And then there is scenario writing. There are, of course, other types of writing. There's the novel writing, there is the poetry, there is anything that can be written. Maybe it could be emails, writing emails, for example. It could be a job, I don't know, maybe. Anyway, now types of script. First of all, the scenario is usually called a screen script. In other words, if we have if you want to write something to make like a story, and you make it like people talking to each other, this one is called a script. Let's agree on this term first of all. And this script has several types. The way that we write this script has several types. You want the scripts to be going to the shooting in order to bring the characters to people who embody those characters, and those people would go and just act the film, etc. So how many types of scripts do we have? Basically, we have two types, speculative and shooting. Speculative and shooting. Speculate means to anticipate, and shooting means at the moment, gerund. It is at the moment. So what happens here? Now, what you do and what I do is to make this speculative script. You write something, try to imagine things as they will happen in the film. You give it now to the director, and the director, what he does is makes amendments to the script in the shooting. In other words, just let me explain it. You have a film and you want it to be acted. what happens is that you try to imagine the story, first of all, and you give it to the director. But the director, maybe because of the place that he's shooting the film, maybe because of the characters that are not happy with certain elements of the script, he finds that it's very important for him to make changes. And there are usually quarrels between people about that. Usually the author says, it is not the same that I wanted to have it in the film, while the director would say it wasn't practical for me to continue along the lines that were provided with the scriptwriter, and I had to change. So there are usually quarrels between them. Anyway, this is not important, but what we have to take into consideration is actually the speculative. What we write is to write speculative. However, I'm going to teach you something about also the shooting. So something about the shooting, something about speculative. However, it's very important to start with the speculative, try to imagine things, because this is the whole thing that's going to be dependent upon, which is the speculative. In the shooting, although you are not going to be required to think about that in the shooting, it's only the director's job usually, unless you sit with him all the time and try to see and try to make amendments, try to make changes. However, I believe I can teach you also this skill, or just to make you more comfortable making a script that can be very close to the shooting at least. Anyway, so the types of script also can be, a script can be divided according to its structure, how it is composed. So the first one is related to production and how to deal with people who are going to use the script. But the second one is the structure itself. So there are several structures of the script, how the script is going to be made. There is the first one, which is called the three structure scripts. It is the script where you provide a story and it starts with the setup. When we set up that the beginning of the story starts with the setting the scene, the time and the place, in other words, and the major characters that are involved. And then after a while, there is the confrontation. In other words, there is a problem to be solved. And at the end, there is the resolution of the problem. So this is the classical way of writing a script dating back since the days of Aristotle. You start with a setup, you reach the peak with the confrontation, and then you reach up to the resolution of the story. There's also another way of this script. It's not the 3 steps. It's called the hero's journey. You might decide that I really wanted people to be here, those people who have the interest and work in the script writing. Unfortunately, they are not here. They could have shared with us some examples about it. Hero's journey. The hero's journey is about a person who makes success in his life. He starts from maybe 0 to become a hero whatsoever. And what are the steps? I'm going now to move to Wikipedia. I hope it works. Now, Wikipedia explains to me the script according to the hero's journey. Let's see what are the steps of that. If you write a script about the hero's journey, and I'm talking about a person who becomes successful in his life, in other words, it could be a person who starts like a poor person and he becomes rich, a person who achieves his dream to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, etc. Now, the first one starts with the call to adventure. So you start with the script after setting the scene about who is acting there. You start with the call to adventure. Something happens in the life of this person, calling him to make an adventure, to take the adventure, to set off the adventure. The adventure and adventure in the dictionary means it is to be involved in something and you do not know the result, if it's going to be good or bad to you. So it's an adventure. So there is a reason from the very beginning, making this person go forward to his journey to become a hero. It's called the call to adventure. This call to adventure, it could be anything. It could be contemplation. It could be just something that you hear from people. It could be any trigger. It could be, for example, a person making fun of you. And I was really interested in a movie made by an amateur like me, and his name I think is Harry Vary. I think he's from the Protagonist Castle group, and he's really amazing because he started his whole scenario talking about a person whose complexion is red. He was born like red, and everybody is looking at him as red, and how he became a pilot at the end of the day, and everybody is proud of him as a pilot. So the call of adventure started from the very beginning when people started to look at him as a person who's extraordinary. So he tries to do something that is totally different, something that can give himself some kind of confidence until he becomes somebody useful in society, so that people will respect him and understand that his color should not count. This is what happens all over the story. So the call of adventure is something that happens from the very beginning. And then there is refusal of the call. Under this kind of refusal of the call, it is the fact that this stage, according to some critics, it is the one that he hesitates, he doesn't want to go because he's a human being. And then there would be a supernatural aid. This is something from the classical period, you know. Could be supernatural aid. Why supernatural aid? Because this is what happened in the classical period when dramatists used to write something and suddenly they find themselves in a problem. They don't know what to do and how to solve this problem. So they say, okay, it could be supernatural aid. There are other types of the steps involved there, according to several critics. But anyway, this starts with the departure. The first thing of the departure, starting with the call to adventure. This is the first thing. And then it moves for refusal to the call, supernatural aid or whatsoever, and how to cross the first threshold, how to pass the first step to make success. This is very real, by the way. This is the reality as we live it. And belly of the whale, how to enter into the whale. In other words, how to get inside the trouble or the adventure, and then to move out in a very convenient manner for you. And this reminds us, by the way, of several stories. If you want to make a story, for example, from the Arab culture, I can cite at least two adventures. Two types of these scenarios. The first one is Salman al-Farisi, and I think you know the story of Salman al-Farisi and his real journey to truth. It is really true. He was captured. He wanted to go to see the Prophet. He didn't know where to find the Prophet, and he moved from one place to another. Once he was captured, I think this is the kind of the juxtaposition here is that he's going to be defeated, but then he is not defeated. He goes to the Prophet. Now, the story that I remember of is the Imam Shafi'i, for example. The call to adventure starts with the person telling him, instead of singing poetry, why don't you learn something about religion and go to Imam Malik? That was the beginning of Imam Shafi'i, as I heard from people. Now, so if you want to follow this script writing, you can follow these steps recommended by some critics, and these are just recommendations, not science, not rocket science, not something that is solid, and I'd like to explain that in a moment. First of all, is there any problem now here, or do you think that I can continue? Please let me know if there is any problem or you're having any issues. Is there anything there on the YouTube channel? Do you think everything is fine there? Okay, I'm not able now to see the screen on the channel. Can you hear me, by the way? Could you please indicate to me if you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much, Hamidu, for that. So there is something very important I would like to share with you now, and this is very important for you in translation. It's very important for you in scenario writing, anything, and so in anything here. Now, philosophy has several parts, and you know, one part of them is called natural philosophy, and from natural philosophy you get the sciences, you get medicine, you get mathematics, you get physics, you get everything. Now let's forget about natural sciences. From philosophy also you get something about the ethics and aesthetics, etc. And from the value theory, from other things, you get the social sciences. In social sciences, you get translation, you get script writing, you get everything. let us be very clear about it, and I would like you just to understand this. The theory in natural sciences like mathematics, medicine, etc., is very strong. Lots of theories are there and lots of hypotheses. However, in application, you cannot see that much applied there. But the theories are very strong, and you can say that there are rules, you can say there are facts, there are things that can be applied, and you can use them in natural sciences, mathematics, medicine, etc. However, scenario writing, just as any kind of other social science, it's totally the opposite. Practice comes first, and the theory, you cannot find lots of theories. So the theories in scenario writing, you can find that they are not that strong. So what we do is to look for the application, to see how people apply them. So the information that we get is almost from first-hand experience from people. And this is a problem, because you do not know what kind of science they have in mind to understand whether what they are doing is correct or not, what they are doing is a model that you can follow or not, and this is a problem. Now, how to solve this problem? I can say that this is a solution that I can propose, and I hope that you can see the screen now. Is about following the steps that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to just explain how to solve this problem and where to find the solution for the script writing, because we don't have a science, as I said. Yes, there are books, critics, maybe something that you can use, but let's see. Now, for the time being, as I said, if you want to write your story about a person, how he succeeded in life, you can use the hero's journey model. And there are certain models offered by people there. Unfortunately, they are not as mature as we want them, because you can hear just very few people talking about this. Problem solving. You can otherwise have a scenario building about a problem solving. Problem solving is that there is a problem and you want to find a solution for this problem. So let's imagine, for example, that there is a child and the child's book was stolen. So how to find the stolen book, and who's going to be the blame to blame, and who's going to be punished for that, or indeed is he going to be punished or not? So this is problem solving. You solve this problem, a problem that's going to be solved. Soliloquy is an introspection. It's something that you try to find information from inside the person to the outside. Soliloquy is a way that only one character speaks, and he speaks about everything that he has in mind, about his feelings. He makes his feeling getting out. So there are two ways of getting information about what happens inside the heart, soul, and mind of a character. The first one is obviously by watching how he deals with other characters and try to analyze what he says. Is there any question in the chat room? I'm not sure if the voice is...
the voice is clear.
The voice is clear. The voice is clear. Okay. Now the issue is that here the first one is to observe the characters and try to analyze them. Of course, this is the more difficult way, but the easier way maybe is to have a person in a soliloquy talking about what he feels, out speaking what he feels. So this is one way of having this script. There is the dialogue, which preserves the interpersonal relations between people. In other words, don't have only one character, you have many characters together talking to each other, and through the characters you can observe and you can understand what they have. There is also that type of a script that I found on the internet, which is called the riddle. Of course, there are maybe thousands of scripts that are available. The riddle is there is a problem, but this problem is in fact a mystery. And the issue is not in order to solve this problem or to find this mystery out, it is to proceed forward with the event and see how things become clearer until the end, until the mystery is solved. Now, this is another thing. So if you want to write a scenario, maybe you can write something about a mystery, something that a crime, for example, or anything else. Usually it's a crime or mysterious event, and then you can see how to solve this problem. So these are the issues that we can use and types of scripts that you can use. Anyway, now this is, by the way, very theoretical, I understand, but let's move now to the types of plot. The types of plot is different from the word story, because story is the actual things that happen, how to talk about what are the people involved and what is the main idea there. However, when we talk about the plot, usually we're talking about the formalistic issue of the story, how to put the story, how to piece the elements of the story together, and what kind of things that are going to be there in order to guide the whole scenario that you're going to write. Now here we have, when we talk about the types of the plot, there are several ways of talking about this. I have chosen something from the internet. It does mean that these are the patterns. It does mean that you have to say versus, but this is what I found. It could be human versus self. It could be human versus human. It could be, in other words, humans talking to each other. It could be human versus nature. So you can say how a human character, etc., is facing nature itself, and there is a problem with nature. Maybe there is a disaster, catastrophe, etc. Remember, please, that in the classical period, usually people talked about supernatural powers. Now, here in the 21st century, I don't think that people are interested in the supernatural powers as much as they are interested in something that happens in reality. So instead of talking about the supernatural power like gods and goddesses in the classical period, and I think nobody is interested at the moment in hearing about them. Please, the camera, stop the camera, Yusra. Well, I think we have a problem because everything is going to be live on YouTube, so pay attention to your camera, don't make it turn on. Okay, now so instead of talking about the supernatural, you talk about the natural. You make a volcano which is angry with the people instead of the classical period where a god or goddesses are angry with the people. It could be environment, the same as nature, not too much different. It could be human and technology, like the machine, like the robots that are fighting, like the robots that are trying to control humans, etc. It could be also the supernatural as well. And each genre has its own way of writing, and each one has its own audience, of course. As far as I am concerned, now I am interested in a human versus human. I'm interested only in humans in my plot. However, think about it. You can add sometimes a machine or nature whatsoever. Now, let me just tell you something in writing, and I hope that this is something going to be of interest for script writers. It is like we can have a combination between a human and nature. And this is something evident in King Lear. This is something evident in many Shakespeare's plays, like Macbeth, for example. Have you? I wonder if you read Macbeth or watched it. In Macbeth, King Lear and others, you can see this sympathy of nature with the humans. When something happened to a human, there is something that happens in nature. There is sympathy. Nature sympathizes with specific human. So you can have, in fact, many of them together, not only one. That's, I think, very clear. It should be very straightforward. Okay. Now we finish with the types of plot, and they are not very important. Just to remember what kind of thing do I have in a plot. However, now we talk about what are the driving forces of the plot. Now here I'm moving to my own experience, by the way, because it's very difficult for me not only to find theories about what other people say, but most importantly, how can I relate it to my work? So at this point, I'm not going to use any book or references, but I'm going to tell you about my experience. So when I try to make a scenario about a script or a film or movie or whatsoever, what I do is two things. First of all, I think about the ideals of Plato. I try to think about the values. And I ask myself, what is the value that I want to use in this scenario, in this movie, in this cartoon? This is first. The second thing is that I am trying to see how can I present this value. So I use Aristotle. Plato talks about the values and talks about the ideals of the world. I take one of them. It could be honesty, credibility, strong, weak, courage, etc. All cowardice, all of them. I could take only one or two of them. And when I go to Aristotle, I try to see how I can have action in life to imitate, because Aristotle says a drama or a play is imitation of action in life. This is what he says. So I try to imagine a story that I can imitate in my scenario. I try to imagine real incidences, real events that happened, and not only in history, but real events that happened with my neighbor, for example. I could imagine a person shouting at another person and just try to put it in my scenario, imitating, in other words, action and life. Now here it's very important to say that first of all, I define some values, yes, and put them in the back of my mind, yes, but as the story writing evolves, what happens is that I make amendments. I add more values or reduce some values, etc. And I would like just to remind you about the first slide, which is speculative versus shooting. This is something that I have to come back again to, and I have to revisit in order to tell you how we can make adjustments, further adjustments, and refining of these values and action and life strategies. So what about the characters? Now this is very important. When you want to write a scenario about the story, when you choose the plot and you want to proceed forward with it, now the plot doesn't work without a protagonist. A protagonist is the person whom you simply love as a reader, as a viewer. So there is a person whom you really want to, you have some sympathy with or relate to, and you want him to prosper, you want him to be good. So this is called protagonist. The protagonist in the story cannot advance forward without another person, and that person is going to be antagonist. Or sometimes there will be a villain. And what's the difference between them? When you choose your protagonist, you have to use an antagonist. An antagonist is a person who works or acts in the opposite direction of the protagonist. So the protagonist is trying to do this, and the antagonist is trying to do something else that that eventually affects the work of the protagonist. But the antagonist doesn't necessarily harm the protagonist. He, however, obstructs him from achieving a goal. And sometimes he's going to harm him, of course. The villain, however, is the person who tries all the time to put obstacles. The villain is trying all the time to destroy the protagonist. So think about it. Do you want to have a villain, an antagonist, or just an antagonist? Sometimes it's too much to have two characters. Just one character is better. Now, why do we have the pinch points? Once you have the protagonist and the antagonist and you proceed forward with the scenario, there is the pinch point. The pinch is something that you do in order to remind the reader or the viewer that this is an antagonist. So the protagonist is very happy and everything is fine with him. However, you try to remind the viewer now that there is an antagonist there all the time acting against the protagonist. For that reason, you have a pinch. You ask the antagonist to do something nasty to the protagonist so that the viewer and the reader would remember that there is an antagonist until the end of the story, of course. And there would be certain pinch points, as some critics suggest. There could be an outsider, as somebody who doesn't belong to anything. And this is in real life. You have people who do not feel that they belong to any place, to any community, to their neighborhood. If you talk about something to him, he speaks the opposite. If you love something, he hates it. You hate something, he loves it. He's all the time the opposite. This character type is called the outsider. Think about it. You may need to put an outsider in your scenario writing. There are gender considerations, and once again, I'm telling you about my experience. I'm not telling you about what other people say. Just combining those things together. This is what I actually do in writing scenarios. I use gender considerations, and here I'm a bit feminist, maybe because I have two daughters and I don't want them to be harmed in society. For that reason, in the scenarios that I do and the films that I produce, they're not films, they are just cartoon amateur films anyway, I try to give them power. So the woman is not a victim. She's a person who has agency. It doesn't mean that she is insolent or something, that she's rude whatsoever. No, on the contrary, she's very clever. She's very nice. She's very pleasant. And there are men who are pleasant as well, but I try to make women more. I try to make women appear as strong, as able to do their own affairs, state of affairs without any problems. They are wise, they know how to deal with things. So these are general considerations that I follow. Now, what are the types of character that you would like to use? What I do personally is that I define my characters. Now I had to define their inner traits. Am I going to use introvert or extrovert? And think about it in your scenarios. When you try to write your own scenario about the characters, think about him. There are many characters. Which one do you want to make introvert? Do you want him to be introvert? Do you want another person to be extrovert? Somebody who is just very active, highly active? Do you want somebody to be a thinker or a feeler? Or maybe both. You can have someone who is a thinker and the other is a feeler, following the spectrum of Carl Jung, of course. Or do you want somebody to be sensational, who believes only in seeing things, in trying to put his hands on things to understand, versus a person who uses intuition? He's intuitive, he uses intuition, as you see. This is very important, by the way, and this gives you a lot of freedom in choosing the way that you write. If you are intuitive yourself and you write intuitively, you use imagination, I think it's going to be very good to have a character who reflects you and who is going to be intuitive. At the same time, put him against a person who is sensational, who just feels that he understands only what he touches or sees. So you see this kind of psychology, when you try to create a character with different psychology, it's going to give you freedom here. It's going to be freedom as you're going to use your own style in writing in a way that is appropriate for each psychological character type. Now, again, the type of characters, I combined something from different sources as well, and this time is from philosophy. Now, aside from the psychological traits, let's talk about the moral trait. And morality means what you can do, what you cannot do, and what is wrong, what is bad, what is good. So, are you going to have a character who is idealistic, another one who is realistic? Somebody who thinks only about imagination and about ideals, about something which is good and bad, or somebody who's realistic, trying to face his own time and challenge. Let us say that you have two characters. Let's look what happens here. I choose a family with two people. One of them is idealistic, the other is realistic. The first one talks about the beautiful ideals in the world, in the upper world, and the second one talks about the ugly side of the world which he lives in. And what happens here is that you make kind of dialogue between them. In one way or another, you find this person who's idealistic trying all the time to indulge himself in nostalgia. He is nostalgic because he wants to go back in history, to go back to those golden days and happy days and remember all of these things. The whole scenario is going to be changed. The whole ways of talking is going to be changed. Do you want a person who is hedonist, for example? A person who cares only about having just a pleasure, moving from one place to another. This person is careless. This person wants only pleasure. He doesn't want to feel any responsibility. You see now the character that you are creating. And once again, if you want him to be cynical, somebody who's indifferent. If you want him to be utilitarian, it is somebody who is going just to care about the majority of people rather than the minority. And I think we talked about it in the past. Do you want him to be skeptical like Descartes? A person who is skeptical about everything. Maybe it's going to be an outsider. So you have two characters talking to each other in the play, on the scenario, and many people talking as well. And you put another one who is an outsider just to make him skeptical. He's skeptical all the time. He doesn't like anything. Everything is wrong for him. Do you want the subjective versus the objective? Now here, this is very important. Do you want the objective or the subjective information? And in order for the viewer and reader to understand these things, there are, of course, subjective and objective information. The objective, what happens in the objective is that you want the reader to do what? To look at the characters and to try to elicit the objective relationship between them and try to understand them from their own perspective without any influence. Now, if the character says, I am generous about himself, you, the reader or the viewer, will not be able to accept that as if it were really correct. You will still have to analyze the character in order to get this information. So you don't get the subjective. But here, once again, the problem is that life is short, and you as a scriptwriter, you want to do something, to use a device in order to deliver this subjective information to the reader very fast, very quickly. One way of doing that, by showing the subjective in an objective way, it is through the dream sequences, what we call the in screenwriting, the dream sequences. Dream sequences started in writing in novels since the Greek. It's about 400 years BC, before Christ. And they started to talk about dreams, that there is a dream. Dream in the films and in the scenarios can be very helpful in trying to show you exactly what the character is in his dream. So it shows up the subjective, the whole thing from the inside of the character in an objective way. And that's going to be much more accepted, or it has a better chance for acceptance by the viewers and the readers. And there is another thing here about the dreams. The dreams can have different portions in this scenario. It could be the whole scenario. It could be a dream. It could be a whole scenario. It could be several dream sequences inside the script. It could be anything you want. In order to move into the dream, there would be certain steps that you can have to use in films, for example, and this is what we are going to use in the software that we use usually in animation. Usually, we use you use the color, you change it into gray or black and white, because all people have dreams in black and white usually. And or maybe you can use the retro function or something that you can have different colors. Maybe you can have different music when it's a film. If it is inside the justice scenario, you can just make markers that this is a dream. And you can, anyway, it's going to be, if it's going to be in reading, in writing, I think it should be more markers, should be clear markers should be made. Another type of the character is going to be the absurd character, a person who believes that everything is absurd in the world and that everything is useless in the world, nothing is meaningless in the world, and there is no value in the world. Maybe this one can go to the antagonist, for example. It could be also for minor characters that are not important. There is the nihilistic character, which also goes along the lines of the absurd, the same thing. The people who believe that nihilistic, that believe that nothing is worth living for and that all values are dead. The ideal world of Plato is already shattered. And there is the religious. A religious person could be a superstitious person. It could be a deterministic person, and I'm talking about philosophers again. A person who believes that his fate is predestined to reach a destiny, and then he is acting accordingly. There is the rationalistic, a character who believes that with my mind alone, I can understand everything. While the other person is empirical, he says, mind does not alone help me understand anything, but I need to choose something else, which is the empirical approach. So this is, in other words, the physicalist, the people who believe just in the physical world. Excuse me, I have just to plug in the charger. Sorry, I just forget these minor things. So this is, I think, Now, finally, this is the last thing that I want to talk about. Is it a tragedy or a comedy or a problem play? If it's a problem play, it doesn't have to be a tragedy. It doesn't have to be a comedy. It's anything else. However, if you want a tragedy or comedy, what's going to be the difference? The main difference between the tragedy and comedy has to do with the character itself, the main character of the play. If it's a tragedy, then it must be a proximity, while it's in comedy, it must be alienation. So in the tragedy, usually what happens, well, not only usually, it has to happen in this way, that the reader or the viewer relates more to the tragic hero. He's very close to the tragic hero, and he wishes the tragic hero not to fall into problems, and he feels pain. While in the comedy, it is alienation, because you do not want to be like the person who is in the comedy, the main hero of the comedy. You feel that he is something stupid, somebody who's acting something that you don't like. Now, in both cases, obviously, tragedy and comedy date back to the Greek times and from the philosophy, and this is what we learn usually in drama. It is that with approximation, alienation, what happens in the readers is catharsis, and after the catharsis, it happens to the purgation level, where they are cured of the bad values, so to speak. Now, in the tragedy, we have a comic hero. Sorry, I think there's a mistake here. It's the tragic hero in the tragedy and the comic hero in the comedy. Sorry, my mistake in writing this slide. Tragedy, well, I think I have to change a lot here because I don't know why I made this mistake. Anyway, I'm going to correct it. So the tragedy, we have a tragic hero, while in the comedy, we have a comic hero. In the tragedy, you have concrete language, and this is very important. While in the comedy, you have ambiguous, something funny language or whatsoever, sad ending and happy ending. Happy ending. So, and this is, by the way, this is what I do. This is what I usually do. In my movies that I make some kind of just dark videos, maybe it could be, so to speak, to talk about reality in the harsh way. In the hero's journey, I follow the hero's journey, and I really, in this tragic sense, I use concrete language, very specific language, very understood language. However, in a comedy, yes, the latest comedy that I put yesterday, it was in Arabic, and I used very funny language. It's very funny language, ambiguous language sometimes. In other words could have many meanings, but at the same time, it is really funny. It's meaningless language. So far, let's see now what we have in the actual exercise that we can do. And I think that we can move now to the actual one moment. So let's see the videos. I think which one? I think it should be 53. It should be 53. 54. 54. Let me show you something. Can you see the video? Please, can you see the video? Could you please confirm that you can see the video?
No. The screen is freezing.
Disk is freezing. Okay, resume. Can you see it now?
ما توقعت أشوفك هون.
Can you see it?
ما في عنا مادة
One moment,
جديدة
I have just to
اليوم.
make sure that this
بالليل
sound.
عشان هيك طلعنا بكير وجيت لعندك. قلت أوصلك معي على البيت. شو أخبار الدراسة؟
Now, first of all, in such cartoon series or such cartoon animation programs, what happens is that the program provides you with specific scenes. In other words, the cartoon provides with the shooting strategies that you have to use. You are restricted and limited. So we said that usually you write anything you want in the script. When it comes to shooting, the director usually changes many of things because of practical issues. And what happens here with such programs, if you use a program like this one, or like any other one you want, what happens is that because of the specific scenes that we have, you have to be very specific in the script. So this is the shooting element here. It is a shooting element because you write a script, but you cannot write everything you want because you are restricted to these scenes. So we have this lady now is talking about, and let's see what we have.
كتير سمعت عنها بزمان.
And we are moving now in the now. So now it goes back to the past, to 3,000 years ago. This usually doesn't happen in an Aristotelian drama because it has to be, as you know, maybe in the Greeks, they said that usually the drama should have a timeline of 24 hours only and should happen in the same place. It doesn't change from another place to another place. So here we can see this one. He's very serious, and suddenly he's now moving into the...
أنت ناديت علي هيني إجيت.
It's going to be a bit sarcastic. Now this character is comic. I made him a comic character by making him talk about serious issues to a wife who's thinking only about cooking. So this is the contradiction between them. And now this woman is going to give him a hard lesson in life. She doesn't care about his work or philosophy. And then, of course, he destroyed everything that she had. And she speaks in a language that is a bit ambiguous, a bit funny maybe. Now let's see the ambiguity.
عمري ضاع.
أبصر شمال عم بشوح بنوح.
إنه بحثي الفلسفي الرائع عن قضية سوف تغير التاريخ. هل الدجاجة جاءت من البيضة أم البيضة جاءت من الدجاجة؟
هاي بسيطة، أنا بساعدك أحلها. جانا أبو طاليس عنده دجاجة، والدجاجة كل يوم بتبيض 20 بيضة. وأبو طاليس بياخد البيض وبيبيعه بالسوق.
ما فهمت عليك.
طيب هلأ بفهمك. أشوف آخرتها معك. الدنيا صباح والأولاد جوعانين والبيض بتلاقيه بالسوق.
يا ريت لو.
So far, she is not making any point of what she says. This is very ambiguous. She's just telling him few facts, and they are not coherent, by the way. Let's see at the end.
تشرحي لي أكثر.
يعني جرجر لي حالك أنت والدشتاشة تبعتك وانضرب على قلبك عالسوق وجبلنا الباب بدو يفطروا الأولاد. معك 5 دقايق وإلا بخليك تشوف الديك أرنب.
So this is the good wife of the philosopher, and see what she does to him. So she's telling him that lots of things, and all of them are meaningless, they are not coherent, and at the end of the day, she's telling them, go now and find the eggs, and I don't care about the hell of your philosophy. Just go and bring me the eggs, and so let us cook the egg and have the children get their breakfast. Now, these are, of course, there are, of course, other techniques that you can use in the screen playing when you put them into action. But remember, usually those scenes, because you can see several scenes here, each scene will define the way that you are writing your script. I think, so far, I think that's only the last thing that I had to say. I'm waiting now for your questions. I think we can stop now the sharing screen. I think we can start answering questions. Do you have any question? You would like to say anything? I'm just ready to answer. Thank you very much for listening. And I think that's all. We can see also our channel to see if they have any question. In the channel, I think there's nobody also is asking any question. I don't think there's any other question. In the live chat, nobody is there on the live chat anyway. Do you have any question? Would like to ask anything? There is only one thing, by the way, that usually in the live chat, everybody speaks in Arabic. Usually there's only one person. I think he speaks in English, or two people talk in English. And maybe that makes sense because nobody is there on the live broadcast, unless there is a problem with the chat itself. Let's see. There are 10 people watching, 11 people watching. Anyway, yes. Do you have any question? Please, you can turn on the mic and talk directly. Thank you very much. That's all on my behalf. That's all on my part. Would you like to say anything? Yes. So in scenario writing, which one are you going to use? Which plot are you going to use? Is it shall I just put the share once again? Is it the hero's journey, the problem solving, the tragedy, the comedy, the street structure, the soliloquy, dialogue, the riddle? Which one do you like? Do you think that you're going to write? None. Okay. The characters, would you like to have them human versus human, or versus nature, or environment, or technology, or supernatural power? This is another question. Which one do you think? Okay. Do you think that this scenario writing presentation was really important at the end of the day? It seems to me that there's nobody talking. What about the types of characters, introvert, extrovert, thinker, feeler? Could you please have just give me some kind of reflection? Okay.
Yes, well.
Please.
First, I think that the first question, just could you please go back to the slide number 6, I think, or yes, here, yeah, okay. The type of scenario, or we can say that the action of the play, the plot itself. Personally, I prefer the traditional one, which starts with the exposition or just an introduction, and then the the raising action, and then climax, and so on, falling action, and denouement or resolution at the end. So this is the traditional, without any devices or literary devices to the scenario. And as for the dialogue, it's better, of course, this is my opinion, the dialogue to be a dialogue in the scene, not soliloquy. That's one thing. What else? Yes, you asked a question about, is this important at the end? Is that important? Personally, yes, it's so important. It's a kind of engaging the audience to watch and understand this scenario in a better way, instead of just writing it. So I'm giving them a lot of various elements. We have a video, we have a dream inside a video, we have it's a whole scenario, characters, and so on. So I'm giving them a chance to engage in what I want to convey. That's also as for the question. What else? I just forgot.
Well, probably no. That's the only thing they ask. In fact, probably you want the three act sequence, or the 3-act style of Aristotle, the same one, which is I think so.
There was something about
classical one, the 3 structure script. Yes. However, you said that as far as the types of script, you will choose just an ordinary one, which is a dialogue. However, have you considered something very important, that sometimes there would be certain limitations because of what I said to you is about the shooting. Everything that you are saying is just speculative. You just try to write something. However, in the shooting, in the process where everything is acted out, there could be certain problems. There could be certain obstacles there. And maybe there would be some changes. For example, the producer or director would tell you, look, I have a problem now because I don't know how to show the objective information to the viewers without any problem, for example. And this is, by the way, is happening to me sometimes. So have you considered using maybe other devices? Because you said you don't want to use any devices, which is something very astonishing for me, because if you don't use literary devices, what happens is that you have to answer the question, what should I do if the shooting it poses some obstacles to me? I don't know. Now, the other question that there is another question. What about the characters? Would you like them to be human versus self, human nature, environment, whatsoever? This was the third question that I asked.
Yes. Okay. Maybe I just I couldn't convey what I want to say in a correct way.
Please clarify.
Yes. Okay. This doesn't mean that I don't want literary devices, but the general outline first, I will make it like what I said. This is the traditional way. And then, like what you have said right now, when shooting these ideas, I may change, of course. I may use, for example, flashback or flash forward. Of course, this will add to the work. As for the type of plot, or we can say the conflict, human versus nature, I like human versus nature. I actually like the Shakespearean way. When there's something in the nature, thunderstorm, for example, there's lightning. This indicates that there's something bad is gonna happen.
Sympathy, yes. Sympathy of nature.
So I like this way of conflict, human versus nature. And it can be also versus technology, because this is, it's taken a peak, also technology. So it's a very...
Technology is the same as environment and nature, by the way. It could be, yes. It could be the same.
Yes, that's it. But of course, I will use literary devices. I may just made a mistake when I was telling the idea.
Yes. Now, the other issues that I have just to ask about the characters, the introvert, how do you reflect about these things, about the philosophical versus the psychological composition of characters? Could you please just reflect on that? What do you think about? Let's just try to make things easier by saying that just an hour ago we were discussing with each other something about dream interpretation, and we talked about dream interpreters. Now, let's say that we will have a story, a script, the crux of which is going to be dream interpreter. First of all, would you like it to be a comedy or a tragedy? Let's just decide on that.
Dream interpreter, so it's...
We will have a dream interpreter in a play, and we will write about him. So let's decide. First of all, it's going to be a comedy or a tragedy?
Tragedy.
It's going to be a tragedy. Dream interpreter is going to be a tragedy. Very good. Now, this is something that I have never thought about. So the dream interpreter, would you like to make him an antagonist or a protagonist?
Let's say a protagonist.
He's going to be the protagonist, so he's going to be the one who is going to fall at the end of the day because of certain problems outside his control. So, from a philosophical point of view, is he idealist, realistic, skeptical, subjective, objective, absurd, nihilistic?
This is a good point. Realistic.
Realistic.
Yes.
You want him to be realistic, a person who just looks at reality. And I mean, by the way, realistic, not in the philosophical sense of the word, but I mean that it's just real life. It's not imaginative life. It's just real life that you are living in. So this is you're fleshing out the character of this dream interpreter, and it's going to be realistic. Is he going to be thinker, feeler, introvert, extrovert, sensational, intuitive? What kind of psychology would you like him to be?
Thinker.
Thinker. He's a person who thinks. So far you have decided the major characteristic of the character. In this way, you will not be able to. You have to develop your script in the way that's compatible with those elements. These are the most important elements. Now, in light of these elements, what you do is now, when you write, you start the action by him maybe talking to somebody, and the way that he talks has to be really highly analytical. It's going to be thinker, not a feeler, and he's going to look at life as reality, to look at real life and to see what the problems. If it's a tragedy, you have to see also what kind of approach that he made in order to make a living, to deal with people, with his personal relations, and you have to try now what is the problem that he's going to cause to himself at the end of the day, because something wrong is going to happen, maybe because of the traits that he has, maybe because his approach to life is not good, not because of his job, but maybe because of his approach to life is not going to work, or maybe because of the influence of the villain or an influence of the outsider. So let me just tell you something. Would you like it to be, you said the 3-act scenario, I understand that. But here, because we were talking about Dream Interpreter, just to make sure that I understand you, are you going to say that how he proceeded forward in Dream Interpreting until he fell, or this is just not a journey, not a hero's journey maybe? Let's think about it. Maybe it's not going to be a hero's journey. It's going to be just a 3-act sequence, and that's all. However, this is a question to you. How does he fall? Is it because of his own traits, philosophically or psychologically, or is it because the encounter with the villain or with the antagonist, this is what caused this problem? They destroyed him simply at the end of the day, and he's still a person that whom we respect. So was it a problem in his character, or the problem maybe with his character?
It's a flaw in his character, yes.
So you can say it is a flaw in his character that was misused by the other people, which is the outsider, which is not outsider, the villain and the antagonist. There should be a person there. And anyway, now these are the main ideas that you have to think about when trying to proceed further with what happens with the scenario of this person. And obviously, because do you want him to be an ordinary person or just a noble, a superman, a superpower, etc.? You have to decide that, of course. And still, there are the encounters and the pinches. You have to see the encounters and the pinches that will happen in this scenario for this person. And then finally, he's going to fall. And after he falls, everybody is sad because of his fallen end. Now, would it be, for example, that his fall is going to be that the police just captured him and claim that he is a superstitious person, that he is trying to do away with money from people, maybe because of a trick? Or do you think that there is another end that you can see
It can be this way, that it will be captured, for example. It can be also that his flaw will lead to his downfall, represented in maybe death. This will be so harsh, but this idea came to my mind.
Yes.
So I just said it. It's a stream of consciousness. Yes, it can be death. It can be that his flaw will lead to his imprisonment, and he will review what he did, and he will just revisit his actions in the past and see that his flow just affected him.
I see the point. So you could use another one, which is stream of consciousness. Not only the flashback technique, of course, they can use. So far, what we have been doing now with the Dream Interpreter example that I'm trying to elicit from you is that we're trying to think about the form. There are two approaches to any scenario writing. It could be either to think about the story first and then you put it in the form, or to start with the form first and then you start to put this story. In other words, you start with the form, which is the structure, the backbone, and then you start to make the flesh and to put it in the bone, the structure. If I hope that I am clear on that. What you do is just try to see the scene, in other words, to see the music, to see the scene, to see the thoughts that you have shared with me about the trait of the character, the protagonist, antagonist, etc., and you decide about the pinch points, and then you can start with the story and see what happens. Yes.
Yes, I prefer to start with the story. And along with the story,
you prefer with the start. So if you start with the story, you start with these basic thoughts from the very beginning without being definitive. And then you start with the story. But what happens is that today you start with it, tomorrow maybe you change your mind about something. So you work steadily but slowly in order to start developing both the form and the content together. It's going to be a bit difficult, by the way, because if you contradict yourself later on, it's going to be over, because you have what's done cannot be undone. The scenario, you see. So if you use the stream of consciousness, for example, it's going to be in writing this scenario, not in the inside the play. I mean, in writing the scenario, if you read the stream of consciousness, what happens there is a problem that could result into contradiction. On the other hand, if you want to use a very structured way of writing the scenario, it will take about 6 months until you find everything, and then you can write them immediately. Yes, please. I think I interrupted you.
No. That it's okay. Yes, I see that it can be difficult, as you just said. It can be difficult that I start with the ideas, and then along with developing the ideas, I can make some adjustments to the ideas and form. But it's just an attempt. It's a trial. You know, I just don't have, of course, enough experience in this field. And I know how could a structure developing take time. But yes, I know also that after this time, I will be able to develop the ideas much faster.
Well, this is theoretically speaking, at least it makes sense theoretically speaking. In the practice, I believe in practice things are going to be more complicated. I think so. I'm not sure. Maybe just you have to try in order to see whether it works or not.
Yes, sure.
You mentioned, yes, certainly it could be faster. It could be more demanding, because you know something. Well, after 6 months, maybe you learn something new and you have to apply something new, and you discover that everything you did in the past 6 months is simply stupid, and they have to change it. For that reason, when you learn more, in fact, not only you make mistakes, but also when you learn more, you discover that you have to do things better, and you have to be more perfect in doing your job. And it's going to be a problem. It's going to take more time. Anyway, yes, I think I can agree with you that sometimes there are certain elements of using the software, maybe, or using these other certain things. You can make them faster. You can start looking for collaborator to collaborate with you in making the sense. Now, my question is how to make it now a comedy. If I want to make it a comedy for the dream interpreter from the very beginning till the end. Now, in order to make him a comedy, let me just make it very clear. You have to use alienation. You have to alienate yourself from that character. In the scenario that I have just produced to you and showed you about the philosopher, I wanted to be a comedy. And in this comedy, that philosopher, I alienated him from the whole scenario, from the whole viewers. For that reason, everybody will make fun of him. However, it's also very important not to say that he's Plato. I didn't call him Plato, for example. I called him a very stupid name. It's not Plato. Because we cannot make fun of a philosopher called Plato or Aristotle or whatsoever. So I made just a person who is just fictitious character, and I gave him a fictitious name even. So he is, because it's very difficult for you to put Plato in the alienation mode and try to convince the reader or the viewer that this person is Plato and you have to make fun of Plato. This is not good. Let me just be very specific about that and very clear. And let me just be from once and for all. This is the pitfall. This is the really pathetic situation what happens in a comedy. They call مدرسة المشاغبين. It is the drama or the play or whatsoever, or anything that has ridiculed the position of the teacher for the first time. At the same time, that was in parallel, almost in parallel with a song. I think it was just it went viral in Europe, which says, "Teacher, leave the kids alone." Maybe "Teacher, leave the kids alone" came even before that, after the World War II. But that was the trigger for a movement in Europe, which is that children do not need anymore to obey their parents. They can go outside, outdoors, they can go with whoever they want. They can have any relation that they want with boyfriends, girlfriends, etc., against the will of their parents. And I think we have a similar مدرسة المشاغبين, etc. So we have something ethical here to consider, that in alienation, when it's a comedy, we do not use names that we think that they have to stay noble in the minds of the readers and viewers. Yes. So what will change also in the comedy, Hamid, if you like to say anything about the character, what type of character is going to be there for the for this dream interpreter?
This means that this character will not be a thinker. He will be like extrovert. I'm just thinking right now.
Extrovert, a person who tries to make party, who's jovial all the time, and who's happy and maybe too much happy. Yes.
Yes, extrovert and not realistic, but idealistic can work in this.
You want him to be idealistic, to talk only about ideas while people are talking about real things. You have to be cautious about this, because when you alienate the ideas, you are making people not think about them seriously. So you have to be very cautious about it. Maybe idealistic, but in the wrong way. He could just form his own ideas that nobody shares with him. Remember, if you say idealistic, you're talking about, for example, generosity, about cowardice, about weakness, about strength. All of those things are enshrined in the system and ingrained in the system of human system of values. So if you apply the alienation principle in comedy, you cannot put them. You cannot be idealistic. You cannot have him idealistic by talking about generosity or whatsoever, or courage, or something like this. You have to, because you are alienating the viewers from courage, and this is not something that we can understand. However, maybe you can make him other ones in philosophical characters. I do not want to influence you that, so you can choose any one of them, any other one of them.
I get the point. I just wanted to say that idealistic, when I said idealistic, I mean that he will try to be ideal in a way that makes people, that creates the comic effect. This is what I mean. And of course, I understand the point that you said about Madrasat al-Mushaghibin and the generosity and a lot of these values. And of course, ridiculing these values may lead to a counter effect. So I cannot, for example, say that in Madrasat al-Mushaghibin, it's just a comedy. Yes, it's a comedy, but along the play, they are just ridiculing the position of a teacher, and I can't just convince the audience at the end that this is just a comedy, and of course we appreciate the teacher and his position.
No, they don't appreciate the teacher. No, they don't certainly appreciate the teacher, because they already created the alienation between themselves and the teacher, and it's over. The teacher is ridiculed already. Even if they say, no, we respect the teacher, we want the teacher, no, that's over. It's over, because the teacher appeared from the very beginning as a stupid person, as a person who's not to be respected from the very beginning. This is what's shown on the play and the stage, at least. So I understand this. Yes, I think that's all what we can say today. If you have any question, I'm just very glad to answer. It seems to be that some of you are getting just tired of this lecture. It has been more than 1 hour and a half. So without much ado, if you don't have any question, we will close immediately.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed this this discussion.
Most welcome. Yes, I enjoyed talking to you as well, all of you, as you know. So is there any other remark that somebody wants to talk about? Would you like to have a practical exercise, maybe, Hamid, or maybe next time we will have a practical exercise with this scenario. We can work together, and we can make it, by the way, educational. Even education is going to be built on scenarios. Anyway, okay, with this being said, I think we can close now this session. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you are going to be able to write scenarios, and hopefully that's going to be a very good job for you all. Thank you very much, and